Hi, today we're going to talk about the Geolocation Web API. I'm going to use a great online presentation tool called Prezi, which I find makes creating and publishing presentations very easy. So let's get started. I wanted to start today by talking a little about the API, and then we'll finish up by looking at the JavaScript code and running the demo. The Geolocation API isn't technically part of the HTML5 spec, but since most people became aware of this API around about the same time the other HTML features were available, it's been lumped in with the other HTML APIs. The Geolocation API allows the browser to communicate with the outside world in an attempt to determine the location of the device the browser is running on. Typically, this is most often used in mobile applications, but this technology can also benefit desktop, laptop users, as a website can now determine general user location and tailor its contents based on that information. The requests for the location made to the API are made asynchronously, and sometime later you'll get a response back. The time it takes to respond is based somewhat on the accuracy you've chosen and how many ways in which the browser has to determine your location, and we'll talk about those right away here. So here are the ways in which the browser can determine your location. It can use IP address. It can use IP address has relatively low accuracy and a high processing overhead. If your device has GPS, it has high accuracy, but it takes a while. Doesn't typically work indoors very well and requires hardware. Wi-Fi is another means of determining your location, and it's pretty accurate. It works indoors, but it needs Wi-Fi access points to work. Let's see, the cell phone is fairly accurate. The cell phone uses the cell phone towers as a way of triangulating your location. It does work indoors wherever you can get cell phone reception. Of course, it's better when there's lots of towers to triangulate against. Let's see, and then finally, user supplied. You can type in your zip code, your address, and this information is, of course, only as accurate as the data the user enters. And this is typically what we've had all along prior to actually having these new opportunities for geolocation. Now, when you make your request to the API, there are three different values here that can be passed in to affect the determining of the location. The first one is the high accuracy flag, and that's a Boolean. The request may take longer. It might or might not be any more accurate. But if your application requires high accuracy, then you probably want to go ahead and set that. There's a timeout where basically it's set to infinite, and basically it takes as long as it has to, really, to determine from all those methods we just showed your location. And if you find that's taking too long, then what you can do is go ahead and define a time like 3, 5, 10 seconds, whatever you feel is too much, where the user would maybe wonder if it's even working. So you can force it to return with whatever it's got at that point by passing this value in. And then finally, maximum age, how old the location value can be before refreshing. And we'll see that there's a way in which you can ask the API to regularly return the position in using a watch command, and in that particular case, you'd be telling it how long until that information is invalid. So this API now is supported in all major browsers, IE 8, Chrome 4, Firefox 3.5, Opera 10.6, and Safari 4.0 and above. You'll notice that the accuracy will differ based on browser. When you make the request in JavaScript, there will be a notice displayed to the user asking them for permission to discover your location. This is different in each browser, but basically the user will be allowed to give that permission. It's not something that is just always going to be available if the user is not allowing it. And that's it. I hope you have fun making your applications your HTML applications location aware. You can make for very powerful applications. And we'll go ahead and look at the demo and take a look at the code now. So on my website I have a link to the demo. You can also download the code and you can go and take a look at the blog article itself. So let's go ahead and launch. And this demo shows the 4 different calls we can make into the Geolocation API. It's off of the navigator object. This will be the typical call most of us would probably make, where you're just going to call get current location. You're going to pass in a function for the show position, where the API will call you back at that function when it has the data, and it will pass the position object back to your function. There's also this is for the function for errors. So one of these two or both might be called once you make this call. So these have to be valid function names. And we'll talk about these when we get into the code, but there's also, let me briefly go over them, there's also a way to pass in options to affect the quality of the information returned. There's also another way to watch, instead of just getting one callback, which would happen in this case. It's a one-time callback. Here we would be watching the position and we'd get regular callbacks on movement. When the user was moving, we would be told about that. And so it returns a watch ID, and then we pass this watch ID back in when we want to clear this and stop this watching that's going on. So we'll go ahead and click here, and I'll show you that when we do get back a longitude and latitude, that I'm then passing that information into Google Maps, and down here you'll see a map displayed. So let's go ahead. And you notice the first thing that happens is it's telling me that this website wants to use my computer's location. I can allow or deny that. And some of the notices, I believe like Firefox, will allow you to allow on this domain name always. And I think here, if you go in to learn more, possibly in Chrome, you can do the same thing. So it can be more than a one-time thing, where you don't want to be asked every time, but you just go ahead and say, I trust this domain, and they can have my computer's location at any time. Of course, that's something you need to decide based on your own privacy decision you make there. So we'll go ahead and allow this time. And we immediately get back longitude, latitude, we get back an accuracy. And in my case, I'm on a laptop. I'm not sure whether it was able to use the Wi-Fi, but this doesn't look to be very accurate. I believe it's in meters. And so we've got a map back here using this longitude and latitude. We don't have other information either, but I'm assuming that with certain browsers and that we would be getting this information, especially like a mobile browser. And if we were on the move, we would be getting heading and speed. Excuse me. So let's go on and look at the actual code here. Okay, so we have our normal HTML5 doc type. I went ahead and put the styles in line. Let me slide past those. We've got the HTML that I showed, these 4 calls here. And then we've got the HTML that displays the data that's returned from the Geolocation API. So let's go down to the actual code here. We create a var for the watch ID, and then we've got 4 different event handlers here. And the first one is that simplest call, which was get current position. We're passing in a show position function and a position error function. Then we've got get current position with options, where we construct an options object, passing in either of these 3 values. Enable high accuracy, I've turned that on. Timeout, this is in milliseconds, and remember the default was no limit. So here we're deciding to limit it to return within a second with the information. And perhaps in a second it wouldn't have gotten much, so maybe that should be more like 5 seconds. But you could have it return within a reasonable amount of time, regardless of whether it was done. And then there's the maximum age, where you're telling it that every second this information is invalid, essentially. I want you to go and update it again. So that's the get current position with options. Let's go down and talk about watch position. This is where you'll get constant callbacks when the information changes. And you see we're returning a watch ID, which you can then pass into the clear watch method here in the Geolocation API to stop watching. So then when show, let's go down to show position here. When show position is called from the Geolocation API, it passes an object it creates called position. And within this position in the coordinates object, all these values are going to be found. Latitude, longitude, accuracy, altitude, altitude accuracy, heading, speed, timestamp, if it's available. And then you'll notice down here I'm actually taking the latitude and longitude. Actually, that should be longitude there instead of I've got latitude twice. But basically it's passing in the latitude and longitude here to, or constructing a URL which basically calls the Google Map API to return the map. And then down here we have a position error function, and there are 4 different codes that can be passed here. 0 is an unknown error. 1 is permission denied, where the user chose to deny permission. Then you could choose at this point to perhaps ask them for their zip code or email if they'd be more comfortable giving you that information, and at least you'd have some sense for where they're located. And then a 2 comes back if the position is unavailable. In other words, it just could not determine your location at all. And number 3 comes back when it times out, and when you've specified a timeout and it has been unable to determine your location, then you'll get this error, case number 3, or the error code would be number 3. So that's basically it. It's pretty easy to use. I hope you're able to make your HTML applications location aware with this, and it's a great new feature, and I hope you're able to use it to enhance your applications. Thank you.